Honking my eye, YouTube. Starting the day. We y'all are already there. Look at Honking my eye, Ranoob. Are you still there on YouTube? I'm gonna assume so. I don't see any new comments, but I see more people jumping on YouTube. Um, Hopefully we have people jumping on Facebook as well. I'll give my eye Facebook and YouTube. Oh, let me see. Oh, I see. We have 8 people on Facebook and 8 people on YouTube. This must be like a new thing because I wasn't there before, right? I don't remember that being there before. I'll give my eye Jeffrey. I'll give my eye Harmony. I'll give my eye Nettie. All right, good. Hope everybody's doing well today. Dua for joining us. Yeah, thank you guys for being patient. We were a little behind. We had our service with our initiates and our students first, which is typically what we do on Communion Sunday. We gather early for meditation, and we do dua'u, we do hesi, etc. And then we come live for the lecture portion. Um, at some point during the afternoon, like once we get through all of our ritual and ceremony. So that's what we did a little bit of today. We got together with family, and we did some of our ceremony and some of our conversation, and now we're here to share this sacred space with you guys. So dua for jumping on and for being here with us today. Today is our regular communion schedule, so we are going to go through our regular communion process, and so we'll start with um, our daily prayer. Okay. Amatu impanatir, sawatu impanatir, audu auma kadipa heru. The translation is give yourself to Netta daily, keep yourself for Netta daily, and may tomorrow be as today. We give homage to the Creator, who is like our Father and who is like our Mother, who is everything that we can perceive and everything that we cannot perceive, who is everything yet is no one thing, who comes to us in the form of the Neteru Ra, who is the light of the heavens, the light of the inner planes, as well as the light of our lives, who shines the light for us on the path of Ma'ati, which is the path of truth, justice, righteousness, and harmonious balance, who comes to us in the form of the light of vitality, giving us the strength and the endurance to live and act upon that which we know to be true. Homage to you, the one who shines in and through us as a beacon of light for those who are blind to the facts of their place, their position, and their responsibility in the divine scheme of things. May we be Ma'akaru, true of thought, word, and deed, to our highest reality, and in the moments of crises and the dark nights of the soul, when it appears that everyone and everything else has let us down. So it is, and so shall it be. Everyone say, Amen Ma'at, Ma'akaru. To our nectar. Before we go any further, you want to do the roll call?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do the roll call. Let's see who's on the line and where's everybody from? Where's everybody hailing from? I see our numbers moving around a lot, so I don't know if people are moving from YouTube to Facebook or Facebook to YouTube. People choosing which video they want to look at. But jump in the comments there. Let us know where y'all at. We doing the roll call real quick before we get into our discussion for the day. Anke Ma'at Wabet Shemset. East Orange in the house. New Haven in the house. Michigan in the house. LA City of Angels. New Rochelle, New York is in the house. That's what's up. I hope you're staying safe and healthy out there in New Rochelle. That's been a big area that got hit. They got hit early with the quarantine. I think they were like quarantined first. So dua neta that you're able to be here with us. North Carolina's in the house. Newcastle, Delaware is in the house. South Jersey in the house. Newark, New Jersey in the house. Lower East Side, Manhattan's in the house. Atlanta, Georgia's in the house. What's up, Tariq? Uncle Ma'at. Awesome. All right, good. That's what's up. All right, we got a lot of East Coast, a lot of South Jersey, some more Jersey. All right, New Haven, Hampton, Connecticut, Linden, West Palm Beach, Florida. Good. Nice, nice. We won't be jealous of the sunshine, Chandra. It's gonna get warmer here too, brother or sister. Excuse me. I saw Tony. That threw me off for a second. Tony and Cookie, what's up, you guys in East Orange? I'll give my aunt Tracy in Pontiac. Oh wow. Dua for letting us know, Majudy. Please stay safe, and we'll send you and your cousin energy as you guys make it through that. But I know you got like the last couple of weeks of videos from the soot. Hopefully your cousin will you know, heed some of your wisdom when it comes down to like some of the stuff to take, the zinc, the vitamin C, all of that taken care so that we're battling that, that COVID-19 on all fronts. Do our netter. Yeah, I know you got to do what you got to do. So we'll see you. We'll talk soon though. All right. Yeah. So I'll just say like before I get into like my message of the day, this week like we had to do the masks, like it was like mandatory masks here and like to go into stores. And just on a light note, like I realized that I hate masks. Like I wasn't wearing them before. I was just kind of, washing my hands, taking my vitamin C, taking my oregano oil, etc. I realized like the mask thing is more like for everybody else to feel safe, like they feel more comfortable. I know that they think that they're protecting me, but that's not my perspective. My perspective is like, the Netaru protect me, like my ancestors protect me, so like I don't need to cover my face. But I feel like other people are encouraged or they feel safer going out knowing that everyone has to wear a mask. So I'm accepting that that's what we got to do, but it's not my favorite thing. It's the masks, like it's hot, man. I was in the store like straight sweating under here, like So greetings, Shelby in Northern Virginia. That's what's up. All right, good. So I hope everybody else is making it through. Uncle Ma'at, Brooklyn. I hope you guys are staying safe and healthy. We continue to encourage people to follow like the recommended suggestions from the CDC, but then also to keep your energy light, keep your energy high, to keep your energy strong, to stay a high vibrational being, to eat the right foods, to take your supplements and things like that, so that you are dealing with it on all fronts and not just washing your hands. Because you can also build your immune system. You can also protect your aura and your energy space. You can also protect your vibration. There's a lot of ways that you can make sure you feel safe and feel protected and feel strengthened in this situation besides just washing your hands. There's so much that we can do. And even though that's not the CDC's perspective, we as conscious, aware people and health-minded people, we know that that's we have to stay focused on the holistic perspective, the all around perspective of what we can be doing. So that's what we'll continue to do. Yeah. Do you want to say anything? You all good? You chilling? Okay. All right. Yeah, that's how I feel. But I'm like that. It's just restricted. I'm like, I can't breathe. I just want to like take a couple deep breaths real quick when nobody's looking. Like, I'm like putting it on like the minute I walk in the store, and like soon as the doors open, I like take it right off. Like I'm not, I walking up to the store. I won't even put it on in the parking lot. I'm just like, it's too much. So it'll definitely keep me out the stores because I don't want to wear that mask too much. But I did have to go out yesterday to ship some orders. We are still getting orders through our website for candles. The tall lamp scented candles will be re-up on Art of Prayer. In fact, I think I'm gonna update the inventory on Art of Prayer today. So I'm still going out to take care of orders, to send out candles. People are like, I know people are still doing their spiritual work, and they still need their tools to do that work. So we'll continue to do that. So do out to you guys who have continued to support us by placing those orders, and I hope you get your packages soon. Anybody that was waiting for anything, it went out yesterday. Okay. All right, good. All right, so just jump right in pretty much. Okay. It feels weird. Like last week we did our show, so I'm like, are we supposed to do something else? But like, no, that's the show. Like this is communion. Okay. All right, so I want to talk a little bit today about identity. I was watching last Sunday. I was watching the new episode of Westworld, and Westworld is in its third season on HBO. So give me a thumbs up in the comments if you guys watch Westworld. I know we conscious people, conscious African people, and so the television is an idiot box, and we don't watch television, and we don't indulge and stuff like that because we're supposed to be meditating and highly spiritual and all those types of things. But give me a thumbs up in the comments if you watch Westworld on HBO every now and again, because you know for me, when I watch television and movies and things like that, I'm looking for lessons in there about human behavior, about human psychology. I'm looking for inspiration. I'm looking for reminders about things. I'm not just, sometimes we are watching for entertainment, and certainly now that we're home all the time, and home more often than usual, we probably are indulging in television more than normally, or more than we should, based on I don't know whose qualifications. But in any event, Westworld is one of the shows that I really enjoy, and it has been a really provocative series that really focuses on these themes of identity, and in particular the characters. They struggle. They're robots, and they struggle with these really central questions of like, who am I? And who am I capable of being? But then more significantly than that, they also question things like, well, who determined who I am? And who determines who it is that I'm going to be, right? And so as I'm watching the latest episodes in the third season, I'm realizing that these questions are not exclusive to just the experience that these robots are going through. Like, these questions around identity are questions of things that all of us struggle with. These are just like standard human identity crisis type of questions. And most of us struggle with these questions, not just at one point in our lives, but there's various points during our lives when we ask ourselves these questions. We might ask ourselves these questions when we're preteens and teenagers. Our bodies are changing, our lives are changing. We have our first crush, we have our first kiss, we get our first period. Our voice gets deeper. We gotta, boys gotta start shaving and things like that. So that starts an evolution of questioning who you are and who are you becoming as you go through that transition. When you get into college, you have to choose a major in college, and like while you're in college, you're starting to decide like, what kind of job am I gonna have, and likely like this job you're gonna have for your whole life. So you gotta like, what is it I really want to do? Who is it I really want to be? And this becomes a big time for many of us to explore ourselves and to figure out who we are and what we want. Our Saturn return is a time of identity crisis and identity questioning. The Saturn return happens when in between the ages of like 28 to 32. And so the Saturn return causes us to question like all the structures in our lives, all the things that we've set up in our lives. Are they really good for us? Is this really what I want? Is this really who I am? Is this really good for me? Like, or maybe I want to change. Maybe I want to tear down the structures and build something new. So we question ourselves again at that point. When people get married, they question their identity, because you have to go from being like an I, a single entity, to a we. And now you're a couple, you're a partnership, you're a team. And that causes people to question their identity. Is one of the reasons why sometimes men are more reluctant to get married, because they're like, hold up, I can't just think the way I used to think as a single person. Now I have to change my whole identity, right? The midlife crisis is an identity issue. Like that, the whole idea of a midlife crisis is an identity issue. And there's like that stereotype of a man who like buys a Ferrari and he gets like a wife who's 30 years younger than him, and he starts dyeing his hair, and like he's going out there because he wants to reclaim his youth, he wants to reclaim his vitality, he wants to feel how he used to feel. So he's going through something, and that midlife crisis is an experience, as an identity experience. When your children leave home, when you're an empty nester, you've been a parent for 20, 30, 40 years of your life, and now you are not primarily someone's parent. You're still their parent, but they don't live at home. You don't got to drive them to soccer games. You don't have to take care of them. You're done raising them. That's another moment where we go through identity crisis. Retirement is another moment we go through identity crisis. Like, you've worked this job for 50, 60 years. Who are you now once you leave that job? Who are you now once you're no longer a teacher or a lawyer or a doctor, or a bus driver? Who are you now that you are retired? What do you do? What do you do with your time? What do you want to do? And you have to figure all of that out. So these existential questions about identity come up so like over and over and over again, like recurring themes for us in our lives. And what even became more significant for me about this is that as I was thinking about identity and we as African people and Westworld, I came across a post that one of my Facebook friends posted. She is a Iya, a priestess in the Ifa tradition. And it gave me another opportunity to reflect on the same theme of identity. She asked in her post, she said, why do y'all want to know the Orisha that governs your head so badly when you're not prepared to properly practice the tradition? Why are you so eager to cut corners? And I thought about this because I see that phenomenon a lot, that people just are desperate to embrace something, even though they don't even really know what they're embracing, and even though they may not really be prepared to really truly embrace it. But the answer probably is the Ma'afa. I'm putting forth that is the answer, because so many of us lost so much during that experience. Maybe not like us in the generation, but like our ancestry, our lineage. And so we, as the result of our ancestry and lineage, we don't have the same authentic connection to our languages. We don't have the same authentic connections to our culture. We don't have the same authentic connections to our food. We don't have the same authentic connection to our community or to our deities or to our source of power, because we were ripped away, because our ancestors were ripped away from their motherland due to the Ma'afa, right? And so many of us as African people in the diaspora, our search for identity exceeds even just those questions that I asked before. And we search for identity even beyond just those points, those typical like transition points that I spoke about in our lives. Like, we actually have additional questions as Black people, such as like, how do I fit in a white society? How do I find a safe space for myself as a Black person, Black woman, Black man, Black child in this society? How do I find a space that's safe for me? How do I deal with the shame of my ancestry? Some of us have had moments where we've been ashamed to be descendants of enslaved Africans. Some of us have had moments where we've been ashamed of our immediate ancestors, such as like shame of your absentee parent, shame of your drug addicted parent, shame of your incarcerated parent. So what does this say about your identity and who you are if you're ashamed of where you come from, right? And you're ashamed of your ancestry. And so we as African people have to ask those questions and struggle with those questions. We struggle with questions of identity because we have to code switch. We have to put on our white voice, or we have to behave, like we got to do our white acting self when we out in certain environments. So you go to work and people know you like this, and then you go to your dance class and people know you like this, and then you come home and people know you like this, and you go out with your friends and people know you like this. And so you are a person who essentially has 4 or 5 different identities all operating in one body, and it's because you don't feel comfortable being your full authentic black self in these white spaces that you operate in. And so you have like, your white voice, your code switching, the things that you're doing in order to make it through those experiences, right? We also have to struggle with how we teach our children to perceive about how their blackness will be perceived, right? Like we have to teach our children about how do they deal with being pulled over? How do they make sure that they come home safe after interactions with the police? How do they deal with being judged by white teachers and white administrators and things like that? So we have to have those conversations with our children as well to prepare them for these same challenges that we're experiencing. And then we've also, many of us over the course of our lives have had to deal with like what it is like to be teased. Teased for either being too white or teased for being too black. Like many of us, at some point or another, we got teased of like, why you talk white? Why you act white? Why you want to be white? And then some of us got teased like, you too black, you too dark skinned, or you too African, or you too something, right? Like, I remember when I was a kid, the phrase African booty scratcher was thrown around, not in a very kind way many times, right? And so if you see yourself as an African person and African is used as a pejorative, then do you struggle with that? What does that say about you personally? What does that do to your self-esteem? How does that affect you? How does that affect your identity as a child? How does that continue to reverberate out into your life as you grow into an adult? And is that a trauma that you now have to heal from, right? And then, I didn't even mention like stereotypes. Like, how do we contend with stereotypes as Black people, right? So like, I'm at this company picnic with all these white people that I work with, and they have fried chicken on the menu, but I don't want people to see me as a stereotype, so I'm not going to eat fried chicken, even though I actually really like fried chicken. Fried chicken is good. This fried chicken looks really nice, but I can't eat it because I can't let them see me as a stereotype, right? And so constantly having to think about things that possibly other demographics of people don't have to think about and don't have to contend with in terms of how we police our behavior and how we police our identity. So, going back to the question about why we want to know who is the Orisha that governs our head or the Neturu that govern our being, or who we are, is because many of us grasp at whatever straws we can get a hold onto so that we can get a hold of ourselves. Like, we just want to know ourselves. We are struggling with so many different questions of identity, whether we know it or not. We are struggling with so many feelings of loss. And so we're trying to find something that's going to uplift us and empower us. So a lot of us do research into Africa, right? And many of us come across Kemet. It's actually one of the things that people tease us about. They're like, we find out about Kemet and then we stop, right? We stop researching. But Kemet gives us a reason to be proud, right? Quite possibly in the first time in your Black American life, you look at Kemet and you're proud to be African and you're proud to be Black, and you see a reflection of yourself as a divine being. You see a reflection of yourself as a powerful being. You see Black African people as important. You see Black African people as strong contributors to civilization, and all you want is to feel that way yourself. You want to just not just feel like you are also powerful, but you want to know it, and you want to operate in the world from that place of power. So all you want to do is just immediately say, like, this is what I am, this is who I am. Now all of a sudden you like, I'm gonna just start calling myself Haru. I'm gonna just start calling myself Tahuti Amin Rapata. I'm gonna just start calling myself Heharu Aset, right? Because you just want to connect to something, to anything that's going to help you to know who you are, and in knowing who you are, that you feel empowered. So yeah, a lot of us have skipped steps and cut corners in our quest for identity. And maybe most of us haven't even really seen it that way or known that's what we were doing. We just were desperate and we were just trying really hard to connect. We just wanted to connect. But the more you dive into an understanding of not just yourself but also the tradition that you've connected with, the more you come to learn, you'll come to learn that just by knowing that information that you studied, that doesn't give you the true source of your power. That's not enough to allow you to really access and really understand the power of culture, right? Like the power in culture is in the living in culture. Okay, like the culture itself is set up of rules, it's set up with obligations, it's set up with responsibilities, it's set up with structures, right? So culture, in African culture in particular, starts with like divination. When babies is in their mother's womb, we are investigating who is this spirit that has chosen to incarnate at this time. What is this spirit's purpose? What are we supposed to do as a community to help this spirit to manifest its purpose? And then when that baby is born, we're giving a name to that baby that's going to, every time we speak that name, remind that child of his or her purpose and remind that child of his or her direction and help them to stay secure on the path of Ma'at, right? So that involves like lessons for the watoto or the karedu, the children, that are happening, all, members of the community teaching them and guiding them and showing them how to do the things that they will one day need to do when they become adults. That involves rites of passage, so that the children who are of age can prove that they've learned the things that they've been taught and that they're ready to transition into adulthood, so that they know, proving that they know themselves, right? Because if you've been taught and you've been given direction and you've been given guidance, you shouldn't necessarily struggle with identity the way that many of us do in Western culture, because the way that African culture is set up is that our identity is affirmed and reaffirmed through the culture constantly, right? And then there's like elders councils and opportunities for young people to get wisdom teachings and guidance from those with more experience. That's actually the basis of the Sebait, right? You look at the writings of Anui and Ptahhotep and Pahebhor. These is not, we say like these are the writings that they left for us, and they are, but they were also the writings that they left for their children, right? Like right then and there for for the very next generation. These are the things that they, like, you have a young married couple come to an experienced married couple and say, we having problems, and they might say like, man, do not order your wife around the house when she knows what she's doing. That's in a husia. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's not just like this idea of like, oh, this is only for us. Like, they were using this wisdom back then. Like, experienced elders were giving guidance to younger adults to help them to navigate challenges. If this is the first time that you've gone off to battle, you speak to an experienced warrior who can help you to summon your courage. If this is the first time that you've planted seeds, you speak to an experienced farmer who can show you the right way to till the earth. So that's the whole purpose of having elders councils and having the wisdom constantly around you all the time. And then what the elders are reminding you to do is to live by the codes of behavior, to live by Ma'at, to live by the 10 virtues of an initiate, to live righteously, honestly, justly, and in divine right order. So African culture was never a system where we just decided as individuals who we are and what we wanted to do. That cult of the individual is actually a Western idea. It's a part of our Westernization. So that's not to say that we don't have some freedom in African culture. We have freedom within the structure, right? So, however, this idea of like, I'm going to just do what I want to do. I'm going to just be whoever I want to be. I don't need nobody telling me nothing. That's actually symptomatic of our European minds. Like, that's our Westernization and our colonialization coming out through us, right? Like, really our true African selves know that none of that is true. Like, you actually are supposed to get guidance. You actually are supposed to, if you start veering off the road of your purpose and of your true identity, you're supposed to have elders and priests and priestesses and guides who help to push you back on track. That is what the culture is supposed to do. The culture is a structure that provides an opportunity for all of its people to live out their collective purpose as well as each of their individual purposes. Because even though I'm saying African culture is not a individualistic, that doesn't mean that we ignore the person in favor of the group. But it also doesn't mean we put the person ahead of the group. It means that both the group and the person are considered and nurtured and taken care of equally and collectively within the structure of the culture, right? Because we are all interconnected, and in African culture, that's what's emphasized. And so African culture also ensures that we all know who we are from birth. So again, we don't necessarily struggle with the same questions about identity that we would struggle with in Western culture. Our community reinforces the truth of our existence over and over and over. So going back to Westworld, right? In season 3, I won't give too much detail because I saw a couple people said they watch Westworld, but they haven't caught up yet. I'm going to encourage y'all to catch up because it's dope. This season is dope. But in season 3, you see them continuing to address their desire to separate themselves from the will of their creator. They want the right to determine who they are for themselves. They want the right to not have to follow any rules or follow any structure. They want the right to not have to be told who they are. And, obviously I'm not saying that there is something wrong with self-determination. I am saying that while separating yourself from the will of your creator is probably okay in a robot world, it's absolutely not okay in the natural world. Like, that's not the way of African people, because the way of African people is understanding that we ourselves are spiritual beings having a human experience, right? Like, I am not this body, I am not this name, I am universal soul. So if I am soul and I am spirit, and spirit is what created me, then when I separate myself from spirit, I'm actually separating myself from myself, right? I am separating myself from Netter. I am separating myself from nature. I am separating myself from my true and higher self. And that is absolutely not the African way. The African way says that our identity is found in spirit, because who we really are is spirit. So there is no finding yourself outside of finding spirit, outside of getting to know spirit, outside of building a relationship with spirit, outside of cultivating a oneness with spirit and nurturing that oneness with spirit. And once you start doing that, once you start developing a relationship with spirit, and you are doing ceremonies and you're doing rituals and you're doing meditations and you're doing yoga and you're doing prayers, now you're engaging in spirituality. And spirituality is nurtured and rooted in African culture. So there isn't a way in which we embrace who we are, spirit, without embracing the structures of our culture. I have what I picked up real quick, because I have a quote I want to share from this book, Ma'at, The Guiding Principles of Moral Living, by the University of Kemet Press. This is a book on our recommended reading list. And maybe somebody will share a link in the chat for you guys so that you can pick it up if you haven't already. But I'm reading from page 263. It's the section called 15 Warnings, okay? And it's paragraph 3. This is an excellent book. So again, I totally recommend everyone add it to their library. Never raise alien culture, religion, or way of life above ancient African's source. Let me read that again, because I don't feel like I said that right. Never raise alien culture, religion, or way of life above ancient African's source. Break forever with the corrupt ways of those who have historically harmed us. Never grovel again. Always defend the righteous, honorable, and progressive qualities of one's own culture first. So, this particular warning is a warning to us that we need to throw away the cult of the individual. That is something that is alien to us as African people. We have to deal with ourselves and make sure we remove that from our minds. It is a warning to release that westernization from our minds, from ourselves. And it is a warning against the reluctance towards structure and codes and obligations, because these are the things that bind us back to our culture, and our culture is our source of strength. When we embrace our culture, we are connecting to the thing. We are binding ourselves to the thing that has the ability to make us great and to help us to realize our divinity. See, when Europeans and white people talk about binding us to something, they want us to be bound to their cultures and their religions and their way of life, because they want to control us. They want to use it against us. They want us to not be determined to realize our greatness. They want us to not become divine beings. They want to break us away from our sources of power. They want to remove the opportunity for us to really be great. So they use bindings to control us, but African culture does not use bindings to control us. African culture uses bindings to empower us. When you are bound to your culture and to your deities and to your languages and to your food, you are bound to the source of your power. You are bound to the source of your strength. I think about in our tradition, the Shen, which is a symbol. Most people know it by what the Greeks called it. They called it the cartouche. And it is a symbol of identity. You'll see it. It's the round symbol. And inside you see a name, right? And what I find this to be incredible about it, about the symbolism of the Shen, is that you'll see all these lines of writing, right? Conversation, prayers, invocations, etc. You have this Shen, but then you see the Shen, and it has the name inside of it. So the name is now distinguished from the rest of the writing because it is protected in this Shen. It is elevated in this Shen. It is made recognizable, like, oh, you look, and then bam, there's this Shen. So it naturally just elevates that name outside of just the regular passages of writing. And so the reason why this is essential is because in African culture, the name is not your identity. Your name is not who you are, but your name points you back to who you are. Your name reminds you of who you are. Your name guides you to remembering yourself over and over and over. So the name is elevated because of its importance to how we understand our purpose. But then the name is in the Shen is also protected. We also have to protect our identity and protect ourselves. We have to guard it, because again, it is our source of power and our source of strength. It is said in our tradition that if you know someone's name, you know their power. This is why Ra was taking such great care to protect his secret name, and why Aset had to use devices to get his secret name, because once she had access to his secret name, she now had access to a level of power and energy that she did not have until she knew that name, until she had that name. So that name is our power, because it is not just the name itself, because of what it reminds us of, because of how it points us back to our identity and therefore to our culture. It is our power, and it deserves protection. And so we encourage and we do divination to determine the purpose of a person, right? First and foremost, why were you incarnated? Why did you come here? What is your purpose? And then you are assigned a name that is aligned to that purpose. In the Temple of Anu, we do that through initiation process. Like, it's part of our initiation, because we believe that you have to be initiated in the culture in order that the culture will reinforce the purpose, protect the name, remind you of your identity. Being initiated once you're initiated, it's like, I have chosen to walk this walk. I have chosen to accept the binds that are going to make me stronger. I have chosen, I have identified that this is the thing that makes me better and is going to make me the realization of the true divine self that I'm meant to be, right? And so you choose to be initiated, you choose to bind yourself to the culture, and once you have bound yourself to the culture, then that destiny and that purpose that has been outlined in the divination, and the name, which is a reminder of that divination, is protected and cultivated through the community and through the culture. That is all interconnected. That's how that is meant to work together. So that's the way we go about doing names in the temple of Anu. I believe that's the way that our ancestors did names in ancient times. Again, you got a name because you belong to the culture, you belong to the community, you lived here, your parents lived here, y'all were, this was your home, this was your village, this is who you are. And so you got your name at birth, you were born into it. And many of us obviously are not born into it, but we have to choose. We have to choose to embrace the culture. We have to choose to embrace the source of power. So unlike the robots of Westworld, we cannot separate ourselves from our creator. We have to embrace our creator as ourselves, and we have to join our ancestral traditions willingly to bring our power to life. And that's not just the Kemetic tradition. That's true of Ifa. That's true of Wudun. That's true of Akan. Whatever traditional African culture or religion that you feel speaks to you and is going to help you with the realization of your divine purpose, you cannot just flirt with it or cut corners with it or dance around the edges of it. You have to accept the system in its totality and in its entirety in order to bring your power and bring the power of the system to life in your life, right? You will never find your power in other people's systems, period. That is not where your power lies. That will never be where your power lies. You will never find at your power as an African person in anarchy. You will never find your power in individualism. Our power as African people is in purpose, and our purpose is driven through spirit. So I just wanted to share that. That's it. And Dua Netter. I saw a lot of comments. Do you want to go back and read the comments? Okay. All right, I'm going to start here just because Makra share. I got teased for having degrees. Some of my friends would think I was stuck up and call me college girl. Yeah, that's a common experience, unfortunately. And again, that causes us to question our identity. Dua to Sanjetti for all of the book recommendations. I strongly, Seba by Dr. Hilliard is an amazing book. I love that book. Dua for the book recommendations. I want you guys to absolutely check out those books. Yeah. Sekre says that we have to learn how to move as powerful, independent women who remain powerful and independent within our discipline and reverence and willingness to honor structural and spiritual authority. Absolutely. That's the essence. That's the key essence right there, because just because you're within a structure doesn't mean you don't have freedom. Mm-hmm. You find your freedom in the structure. That is the power of it. People have this such irresponsible and incorrect idea about how discipline restricts you. And to some degree, I guess it does, but discipline also empowers you. And I think one of the things we're learning, even by this whole quarantine situation, is how the discipline of staying home and the discipline of washing your hands and the discipline of wearing a mask even is going to keep you healthier or keep you safer or possibly even make other people feel safer as far as in their interactions with you. They'll feel safer about interacting with you. So that's a power as well. The fact that you can move freely, the fact that that just having that measure of discipline allows you to have that measure of freedom and safety. There is so much freedom in discipline, and so much freedom in structure. Yeah. Okay. And I see Kisa and YouTube also suggested. So like she also suggested. Oh, here we go. Makra said those questions seem like they stay with you subconsciously. Many of them do stay with us subconsciously. We don't even know that we're still struggling with that. Code switching does happen without realizing. We just do it, right? Like we just learn how to navigate the white world. We also struggle with the impact of intersectionality and how we navigate our multiple targeted identities. That's right, Wabet Kisa. Some of us deal with, identity crises as far as being women. Some of us deal with identity crises as far as being Black men. And we have different things that we each struggle with, and that's absolutely necessary to contend with. Yeah. Drop the ankh. Do I say Gray? Discipline prevents slavery to the lower self. Well, I like that, Panam. That's that's like a t-shirt moment or a poster or something right there too. I like that. Yeah, absolutely. Typically when people think that they're just like doing their own thing, they're really just a slave to their lower self. They really just have impulses that they can't control and impulses that they can't stop. And maybe on some level don't even want to stop. But if you really are trying to cultivate divinity in yourself and cultivate betterness from yourself, like divine beings have control over themselves. Sure. You know what I'm saying? Like only when the divine beings are acting out of their worst impulses and acting out of their worst selves do you see that they do things out of control. That's when they start veering into that isfet. That's when they start needing Jehudi to come check them and get them back in line again, just like we sometimes need Jehudi to come check us and get us back in line again too. Right. But when the divine beings are operating from a place of ma'at, they are structured, they are disciplined, they are control. So we also have to be willing to submit ourselves to a measure of control, again, in order to realize and express our true divinity in who we are. And again, we find that discipline and that structure in our culture. That's where we find it first and foremost. We won't find it anywhere else. So so thank you guys for all the comments and thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate it. And I hope you got something out of the message. It was just seeing so many different things about identity coming up this week. It just came, for me, like I'm reflecting on this theme and I'm talking about this, I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, okay, this is something I want to share with the community, because again, I know we all struggle with identity at various points, but once we know who we are as real divine beings, as real divine selves, like again, we don't know who we are when we're trying to escape our culture. But once we're in our culture and our culture is reminding us day in and day out, you are spirit, you are a divine being, you are the manifestation of Neter, then there is no more need for identity crisis. There is no more need for identity questioning, because at the end of the day, the culture always guides us back to the true self, which is the divine self, which is the spirit self. Okay? Baba Haru, Ankima Us, Baba Haru, dua for joining us. He asked, some seem to have a need to mix Kemet with other diluted African systems. Why? That's a good question. I really don't know why people would mix. I guess on some level, some people feel like the Kemetic tradition is incomplete. Yeah. Because some of the other West African traditions are, for lack of a better word, unbroken, right? And they give you a direct culture and lineage back to the continent, whereas the Kemetic culture, like we are reconstructing that culture right here in the West. Baba Haru is one of the first people who started that work. Of reconstructing the culture here in the West after it had not been practiced for thousands of years. So I would make the case that I don't know that we need to mix cultures. I think the work that is being done to reconstruct the Kemetic culture is the right thing. I think we can look into African cultures for guidance about how we reconstruct the Kemetic culture, but I don't think that we need to start calling Oshun a Neteru. Like Oshun is a Orisha, like she's from the Ifa tradition. Like we don't have to bring their practices and their deities and their things like that into our culture, but we can look at Ifa and say, okay, this might give us a sense of how our ancestors, our African ancestors, did things. We look at a Khan and say this might give us a sense of how they did these other things. We look at the Bantu, etc., and just use that as a framework to help us with reconstruction work. So, yeah. Quote from Asa Hilliard: "There is no way around serious and disciplined study. Africans should study individually and in groups." Duan Netzer. That's a great quote. But again, we still have to apply. We still have to live in the culture. Some of us get stuck at the study part. Like, we study and we be like, Africa is dope. I went my whole life thinking Africa was whack, and now I find out Africa is dope. And we just don't know what to do with ourselves after that. Like, no, now you actually have to be proud to be African and like live in Africa. You know what I mean? And or live not on the continent physically. I'm just saying, like, live in African culture, like live as an African, and embrace your specific culture, because Africa, it has hundreds of different cultures. So which culture is the one that you choose and you embrace and resonates with you, and then live that culture fully 100% and embrace that, right? So
did you just address that question in your answer? Is the Kemetic system a closed system?
Is the Kemetic system a closed system? Is there a connection between the systems? From Brother Tariq. I'm not sure. What do you think he means by closed system?
I don't know.
Yeah. I would ask Tarika, can you clarify, what do you mean by a closed system? I think one of the things that I'll say to answer that is that we often say that there is one African religion and that there are hundreds of different cultural expressions of that African religion. So the Kemetic tradition is one cultural expression of the African religion, and then the Akan is one cultural expression of the African religion, and Ifa is one, and Dogon is one, etc., etc. So I would say yes, there are connections between the system, because it's one religious system or one spiritual system, and it's just a multiplicity of cultural expressions and ways that the religion expresses itself through their cultures.
Yeah, I think that answered it.
Sajedi also added that people mix African cultures with Asian or European culture due to lack of study or lack of confidence in the study of African culture. It is lack of value in African phenomenon. That's actually really important as well. The lack of value in Africa, like that people just don't see that it, like they feel like in order to get the real truth or to get the real power, they got to go to Asia or they got to go to India. You know what I mean? Like they got to go someplace else. They can't get it from Africa. But I would connect that back to what we talked about before about identity. Like if you grew up and you felt like, you were teased, Africa was always looked down on and talked bad about, and the only thing about African history you learned was that y'all was slaves, and you know what I'm saying? Then like you become a person at some point or another who doesn't know what Africa has to offer. And so yes, it is incumbent upon us as adults to learn more and to study more and to get away from that. But definitely that's a place where many of us start, is not seeing the value in Africa.
What about the African spirituality is not taught as openly as the other systems? So you could go to Shaolin martial arts school and learn about Shaolin martial arts and things like that. There's yoga schools all over the place, but when it comes to African spirituality, it just seems like it's always relegated to the past or history. And anytime you do hear about it, it seems very secretive. Maybe that's what he was talking about. Was it a closed system or not?
Oh, got you. Like, is it a secretive system?
Yeah.
And in which case, I would say sort of. Like, obviously, we're not secretive. We right here on Facebook. We on YouTube. Like, but there are things that are open public level, and then there are things that are like initiate level, and then there are things that are priest level. But that's the same as every tradition. So you're not going to learn what priests learn unless you're becoming a priest. So, like, there's this westernization that we have that tells us that we're supposed to know everything and that everybody's supposed to give everything to us. and we're not supposed to have to qualify for it. We're just supposed to have it openly and freely. And that's just not true in the African tradition. In the African tradition, they're like, you got to qualify. You have to qualify through purpose, and you have to qualify through integrity. And so once you qualify through purpose to be a priestess, and then you qualify through integrity to be a priestess, then we'll take you through learning those things. But if you haven't qualified, then stick to being a teacher. You know what I'm saying? Like stick with your level, you know. And I don't get the sense that our ancient ancestors felt like they needed to know everything or be exposed to everything. I felt like they was totally okay with like just that there was different, like, my responsibility is to be a farmer. I'm going to be the best farmer I'm supposed to be. And their responsibility is to be a priest, and so I'm gonna go to them for spiritual guidance, and they're gonna come to me for vegetation. Like, it's the reciprocity in the culture, and it is the communal, like, sharing and uplifting that's native to the culture. Um, yeah. He said a closed system wouldn't allow the integration of other systems, per Baba's statement in question.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, I guess then I'll say it like this, like, there isn't like a board of elders that like polices how people practice the Kemetic tradition. We could have a whole different conversation about whether there should be or whatever, or any of that, and I won't get into that right now. I'll just say there is not one. You know what I mean? So uh you'll go to a different temple and they'll do things a little differently than we do things in the temple of Anu. They may have more influences from other African traditions, or more influences from Asian traditions, or more influences from Christianity and things like that. Um, I think that's not really the way that I think we're in agreement with Baba Haru that like Kemet is enough, right? And so we should be able to find everything we need within our system. And I'll just say that for those other people who choose to look elsewhere, I won't say it's because they think Kemet isn't enough. I think they just recognize, or they just feel like everything is interconnected, so why not? You know what I mean? I think that that's probably their perspective. Like, well, these Asian traditions they came from Africa anyway. They come from us anyway, so why can't I use this to help me build out my temple and things like that?
And in your home, you have the right to practice what you want, your own unique expression. I think the exclusivity is coming to, it comes down to your initiatory process. So each temple or house has its own initiatory process, and they expect for you to do things a certain way. Mm-hmm. But in contrast to what you're initiated in, you might do a DNA ancestry test and then find out that you're Akan, or you find out you're Nigerian or from Benin. So technically, you do have a right to initiate in those systems also. So hence, when I go back to in your personal place, in your own space, in your own house, you can have a Yoruba altar, you can have a Kemetic altar or a Kano altar, because that's still part of your ancestry too. But do it with knowledge, not just guessing all over the place.
Right.
Because each one of those systems are specific, and you have to be educated on what mixes harmoniously and what doesn't mix harmoniously.
Yeah. Because what offends one netter might be good. Like, you might have to give a offering to an Orisha that's gonna offend the netter that you worshiping on this other altar. Like, so you gotta know the rules. You gotta know the structure. You gotta know how to do it. So you can't do the whole cut and quarters thing. You gotta be prepared to practice, and you gotta be prepared to take every single thing. Like, initiation is obligation. Like, once you're initiated, you're now obligated to the Netaru. Same thing with divination. Once you get a reading done, you're now obligated, right? Like, whatever the Netaru speak to you and say to you in divination, you obligated to that. Like, you got to do it. You don't do it, you're gonna have to answer for not doing it. So don't go into stuff not knowing or not prepared to do the work and to follow through on the pledge that you're making or the obligation that you're accepting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's go back now a little bit further to Smajetta. Yeah. No, a little bit more. Yeah. What's that?
He said, modern Sanjet, this is the session of Sue Sanjeti on Gra. He said, modern African cultures are best qualified to reconstruct Kemetic tradition because there is a lot of things about Kemet in regards to instructions on how and why that have not been left for us. So we compare modern African cultures to Kemet because they maintain the same collective cultural seed, history, and origin, which something similar to what we said before, or what I said before about the singularity of African religion that has a multiplicity of cultural expressions. So if we're going to look to other cultures, we should look within Africa. We shouldn't need to look outside of the continent. Bonham said, white supremacy has convinced the world that Africans were incapable of producing high culture, so African spiritual systems are often, unfortunately, viewed as primitive or invalid when compared to the systems of the dominant society. I completely agree. And that goes back to like removing the westernization and the colonialization of our minds, making sure that we are not putting alien cultures above our own, making sure that we are open to and acknowledging the righteous and the high producing and the excellent and the good, like good aspects of Africanness and African culture and African being. So that is like work that we all have to do. If we haven't done it, we have to do it. If we've done it, we have to keep doing it because it's necessary. It's necessary to elevate our cultures and to recognize their goodness and their power and their value to us as African people, particularly because we've been taught that that's not true. Yeah. Just checking on you guys on YouTube too. All right, cool. So Dua, were you gonna share anything? You all good?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
2 hours so far.
No, just an hour.
No, we've been on since.
Oh yeah, we have been on for 2 hours. Okay. All right, well, we're all good then. So I thank you guys again for joining us today. Thank you guys so much for some of the comments that you shared, because those were really impactful and thoughtful and let me know that what we were talking about was really hitting home for you. So we'll be back next Sunday for the next episode of The Crook and the Flail. And you guys know that we start our episodes of Crook and Flail in the afternoon, so it's a little later than our communions, because we want to make sure that we get a chance to watch the Shrine of Ma'at with their ascension next Sunday. So we'll probably start maybe like 3. Okay, so we'll start around 3 o'clock. So we'll see you guys then. All right, Dua Netter, Shami Matad.